Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm going to give everybody a few minutes to join us, and I'll start with a little introduction. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'll move my little toolbar around here. Okay, I guess we can go ahead and get started. Well, not if the rest of my go away. All right, there we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Jennifer Kaur. I'm the Executive Director of the Tennessee Historical Society, and welcome to Tennessee 101, our online webinar series devoted to the history of Tennessee music. This is number 6 out of 8 that we have planned for this fiscal year. For, I guess we can divide it into semesters. So this is number 2 in our spring semester. We will be having 2 more before the end of this year. So let's go over a few things about the series itself. Coming up, our next session will be on murder ballads, Knoxville girl murder ballads and misogyny in Tennessee music. And then our last one will be Southern but Not Country, the interwar career of Nashville band leader Francis Craig. So I hope you're able to tune in to join us for those. If you do want to join any of our online programming, go to our website, tennesseehistory.org, to the programs page, and you'll see there we have Tennessee Talks and Tennessee 101. And this is the landing page for Tennessee 101, and down below you'll see all of the past sessions that we've had and our upcoming sessions as well. For the specific page for each program, we have a link that will take you to resources that our speakers have put together for us, and these include playlists, or maybe they've shared their slides with us and we can pass those along to you. After each session is over, this is where we'll put the link for the recording. This is what the Padlet looks like with additional resources in case you just can't get enough of that particular subject. And then once the session is over, give us a couple days to do the editing, and then Nikki, our program director, will put the link up for the YouTube video for that session if you miss it. And we did a survey of people not long ago, and one of the questions that we asked was, if you miss a session, how likely are you to watch it? And almost everybody, 90% of the people said, I do watch it, and about 10% of the people said, I intend to watch it, or I'm going to try to watch it. So I was very impressed with you all as our audience and how dedicated you are to this topic. During the talk, if you have any questions or answers, or questions or comments, if you'll put them in the Q&A box, and we will attempt to answer them. We have some time at the end. Follow us on social media. This is the best way to learn about upcoming programs. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I also want to tell you about Tennessee Talks. Tennessee Talks is our online text discussion group. That's a fancy way of saying a book club. And if you are a member of the Tennessee Historical Society, this is open to you. It is a benefit of membership. Back in January, we talked about Coal Miner's Daughter. Next week, we'll be discussing Ties That Bind, the story of Afro-Cherokee family in pre-Civil War Tennessee. And in March, we'll be talking about the novel Memphis. And in April, the collection of short stories called The Hawk's Done Gone by Mildred Hahn, which is set in East Tennessee. And our discussant leader for these sessions is Dr. Carol Busey. And for each session, we have a special guest. Dr. Natalie Inman will be our guest next week, and Bridget Jones will be our guest in March. We want to thank our sponsors, Humanities Tennessee and the Tennessee Arts Commission. They gave us the money to be able to do this, so please support the arts and humanities in our state, and if you get a chance, give them a thank you from us. Now I'd like to introduce Dr. Sean Pitts. Sean is one of the co-conveners of this series. He's very involved with Arts in McNary and Selmer, and he has done quite a bit of research on the music of West Tennessee and the arts and crafts, including broom making and slug burger making and Tennessee music boxes. He also happens to be an expert on rockabilly. And so Sean is going to kick off this session for us. Sean, if you'd like to go ahead.
Thanks, Jennifer. It's a great pleasure to be here, and we've enjoyed a great series so far. I think it's been great, and looking forward to the closing sessions. Great session tonight with an interesting piece of news that's come out in the last couple of weeks about Tennessee HBCU bands, and so I hope that will get a little bit of time in the discussion tonight. But I do want to go ahead and introduce my co-convener and friend, Dr. Langston Wilkins. Last time, I think I promoted Dr. Wilkins, but I'm going to, if I could make that stick, I would do that again this evening. But since that's probably not going to work, I want to introduce him as an assistant professor of folklore and African American studies at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Langston's academic interests include African American music and folk life, hip hop culture, urban folklore, and car culture, and other areas of research. Before he joined academia, Langston worked as a public folklorist here in Tennessee at the Tennessee Arts Commission and Humanities Tennessee. Both great organizations, and you can thank them, as Jennifer said, for the sponsorship of this series. He also worked in Washington at the Center for Washington Cultural Traditions there, and we are glad he's a little closer to us, not a lot, but a little closer back to Tennessee since he's taken the job over in Madison. But in each of those positions, as a public folklorist, Langston produced documentation and offered assistance for artists and musicians and craftspeople and cultural organizations working or presenting in traditional arts and art forms in this state and in Washington. So I want to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Wilkins now.
Thank you, Sean, for that introduction. It made me feel quite special, kind of emotional. So thank you. So I'm super eager to get to our guest for tonight, but I thought that I would start our session by offering a brief overview of HBCU, or historically Black college university history, and also the musical legacy of these institutions. So with that said, let me try to share my screen. Okay. So yeah, so the music of historically Black colleges and universities has a rich and diverse history that's played an important role in shaping American music in general for over 100 years. HBCUs were established in the late 19th and early 20th centuries with the goal of providing higher education to African Americans who were largely excluded from white institutions due to segregation and discrimination. So a little bit of history of HBCUs in general. Prior to emancipation in 1865, anti-literacy laws in the South prevented African Americans from obtaining legitimate education. African Americans were actually legally allowed to attend college at predominantly white universities in the North, but were generally and forcefully discouraged to do so. And so within this racial climate, philanthropists and religious organizations began to develop schools dedicated to educating the Black population in the area. In 1837, Cheyney University in Philadelphia became the first HBCU. And in the 1850s, 3 more HBCUs were founded. You had Minor Normal School in Washington, D.C., which is now, or eventually became, the University of the District of Columbia. Then you have Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, and also Wilberforce University in Ohio. And HBCU saw significant growth post-emancipation. In fact, 9 HBCUs were founded in 1867 alone. Those include storied institutions like Morehouse College, Alabama State University, Morgan State University, and Howard University. These schools were founded by African-American leaders, missionaries, abolitionists, and more, and were often supported by Northern philanthropic organizations. And currently there are over 100 HBCUs in the United States. Tennessee alone is home to 7 HBCUs. There's actually at least one HBCU in each Grand Division. Nashville has 4 in the area. Those include Fisk University, which was founded in 1866, and we'll talk quite a bit about Fisk here in a few minutes. You had Meharry Medical College, which was founded in Nashville in 1876. Tennessee State University, founded in 1912 in Nashville, and also American Baptist College, which was founded in 1924 in Nashville as well. Memphis is home to Lemoyne-Owen College, which is actually a merger of 2 different universities, the oldest being founded in 1871, but I think the merger happened in 1968. Lane College is in Jackson, Tennessee. And then if you go over to East Tennessee, there's Knoxville College, of course, in Knoxville. Again, HBCUs have been hotbeds for musical innovation for over, well, around 150 years really now. One of the most significant contributions of HBCUs to the African-American and general American music landscape is the development of the arranged spirituals. Arranged spirituals are transformed versions of what's known as the folk spiritual, the religious folk song, the a cappella based folk song that originated among slaves during antebellum slavery. These songs were often sung in the call and response style and served as a form of communication, of course, and entertainment for slaves. These folk songs, these Negro spirituals, had an improvisational style and an idiosyncratic element, and they were often accompanied by hand clapping, foot stomping, and other traditional African diasporic and African American folk percussive practices. Now, after the Civil War ended and slavery was abolished, a group of students from Fisk University formed a singing group called the Fisk Jubilee Singers. And this group was created to raise funds for the university, which was struggling financially at the time. And the Fisk Jubilee Singers gained popularity and began touring the United States and also in Europe, performing spirituals, or performing the arranged spirituals and other African-American folk songs. And they are widely credited with introducing the Negro spiritual to wider audiences. And let's hopefully listen to a clip or example of the Fisk Jubilee Singers and their arranged spirituals. This is them singing on a recording of Swing Low, Sweet Chariot in 1909.
Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. I'm sometimes up and I'm sometimes down, coming for to carry me home. But still my soul feels the heavenly sound, coming for to carry me home. Sing low, sweet.
Now, these arranged spirituals were often transformed by the Fisk Jubilee Singers through harmonization, instrumentation, and choreography, making the music, the spiritual, more appealing to a broader audience. And the effort of the Fisk Jubilee Singers also helped preserve these important pieces of African-American history and culture by introducing them to people who may not have otherwise been exposed to them. And their work led to the emergence of similar groups and choirs at other HBCUs. And these choirs, these groups have produced many different renowned vocalists, like, for example, Leontine Price. And today, arranged spirituals continue to be an essential part of African American music and culture, and the Fisk Jubilee Singers remain an important cultural institution, still performing today, over 150 years after their founding. In fact, in 2021, the group took home their first ever Grammy Award, winning Best Roots Gospel performance for their album, Celebrating Fisk. And just let's listen to what they sound like now. Now, HBCUs also have a rich tradition of marching bands that dates back to the early 1900s, well, actually maybe before that. HBCU bands are known for their high energy performances, their instrumental excellence, of course, precision drills, and elaborate choreography. And marching bands are an important part of HBCU culture in general, with many students participating in them as a way to express themselves and connect with their culture and heritage, and to also showcase their incredible talents. The bands are also a major draw for spectators with their dynamic performances, drawing crowds of thousands at events like games, parades, and especially football games. People actually show up to the football games just to see the band. Well, that's quite common. HBCU marching bands are known for the unique style of play known as show-style marching, and this involves playing a mix of popular music, R&B, hip-hop, often with intricate arrangements and improvisations. And these bands also commonly incorporate elements of dance and step. And in addition to their musical excellence, HBCU marching bands are also known for their incredible costuming and intricate formations. You'll see band members wearing elaborate uniforms, complete with hats, capes, and other accessories. And they move in precise patterns and formations on the field. And these formations can include everything from geometric shapes and letters to intricate designs that depict scenes from popular culture or current events. And the Tennessee State Aristocratic Band has a storied legacy of putting on dynamic field shows featuring a mix of musicianship and showmanship. And in addition, this year, they became the first ever marching band to win a Grammy Award for their gospel album, The Urban Hymnal. And let's take a brief look at TSU's band. In conclusion, the music of HBCUs is a testament to the resilience and creativity of African Americans and their contributions to American culture. HBCUs have provided a space for African American musicians to develop their talents, to express their experiences and perspectives, and to connect with communities. The music of HBCUs continue to inspire and influence American music, and it remains an important part of our cultural heritage. So I'm going to stop sharing and introduce our guests. Welcome, Dr. Gary Powell Nash. Gary Powell Nash is a native of Flint, Michigan. He is professor of music at Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee, where he teaches and coordinates courses in music theory, technology, composition, applied woodwinds, and he also conducts the Fisk Jazz Ensemble. Dr. Nash holds a PhD in music composition from Michigan State University, and he has written musical works for orchestra, band and wind ensembles, choir, art songs, electroacoustic works, and instrumental chamber compositions, including 2 short film scores. His music has been performed in all major regions of the United States and abroad on the continents of Asia and Europe. And Dr. Nash has received numerous grants, commissions, and awards for his compositions, including Vanderbilt University's Wind Symphony and the composition On the Battlefield with Certainty in 2022, which commemorated the opening of the National Museum of African American Music. 11 of his compositions are featured on the compact disc, with 5 of those appearing on Albany, Centaur, and Citadel labels. And so I want to welcome Dr. Gary Powell Nash. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. And so to jump off our conversation, I want to start widely. And I'm wondering, can you talk a bit about how the HBCU music culture has influenced American music culture in general, both, well, in the United States, and also maybe you can expand to the world. What is the legacy and impact in general of all the musical work that's happened in HBCU spaces?
Well, okay, now hearing from me, I was going to say, when you did your intro, you covered a lot of it. But I can say that just from my work, not only at Fisk University, but I had spent 7 years at Mississippi Valley State University prior to that. And basically, for the most part, we just continue to be a resource. Of course, at many HBCUs, you'll find not only musicians of color, but composers of color. And now in the case of Fisk University with the Negro Spiritual, yeah, we just remain to be a major source of that type of music. And as far as jazz and other types of music, like when I first got here, which was in 2003, the jazz ensemble was the only instrumental ensemble, or actually, well, let me rephrase that. We had also hired someone to start the university band at that point in time too. But it was a jazz ensemble that was really the one that was going. We were doing performances, and so that's how we do it as far as the Fisk Jazz Ensemble from that perspective.
Yeah, thank you, and you kind of mentioned the spiritual, of course, and we of course need to talk about the Fisk Jubilee Singers. And can you maybe expand on the legacy of the Fisk Jubilee Singers in terms of its impact on the African American music continuum, and also its impact on American music in general?
Well, once again, you covered that in your introduction, a lot of it. The only thing to really add, I know with myself personally, when I was studying for my doctoral comprehensive exams, and I was looking specifically at American music, yes, there was, the Fisk Jubilee Singers were part of that. In fact, even part of the major texts that I was studying from. So, once again, just it being a resource for the Negro Spiritual. And also I'll mention too, when my very first year here, there was a big workshop and I guess festival at Belmont University with Dr. Andre Thomas And the Jubilee Singers were, of course, the featured group in that. But there were many other groups, most of them from predominantly white institutions. In fact, one of the things I remember about that event the most is how I didn't catch the intro, but most of the performances were okay. But then after the Fisk Jubilee Singers sang, they got better. The performances got better. They just had a better feeling of how to sing the spiritual. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this was kind of touched on earlier, but I saw that Fisk has revived their marching band, right? And so, can you maybe talk about the impetus for bringing back the marching band and reviving that, and as well as the importance of marching bands in HBCU culture as well?
Okay, so for the first part of it, as I mentioned before, we had the university band in the beginning. One of the reasons why it probably did not get any farther than it did, just mostly because of funding and resources and then building interest. So I try to do as much as I can as far as building the instrumental music at Fisk. And then when past President Van Newkirk came aboard and became, actually I think he was working on it when he was provost, bringing the band back, because there's initial concern, the fact that Fisk didn't have a football team. In fact, I think it was in the 70s when they canceled the football. First thing he says is, well, at Talladega College, they also do not have a football team, but they have a marching band. And then I know one of his main goals there was he believed that having the band would boost our enrollment, which it actually has, because for the first time since I've been here, we're over 1,000 students, and they plan on having even more students. So that's one of the things that the band does. I mean, with band in general, it brings people together for sure. Many people, they appreciate that form of entertainment for the most part. Not only for the entertainment value, but just what am I trying to say? The whole cultural experience is what they like. And just the contribution to the arts and just, once again, that community involvement. In fact, earlier today, the Jazz Ensemble performed in the cafeteria. We performed, it's for Valentine's Day, but we've done it before. And one of the reasons I like performing in the cafeteria is because I always say, well, if the people won't come to our concerts, we'll bring the music to them. So, but the performance went really well. People liked it, and hopefully from that, we'll get more people at our concerts and other music department sponsored events.
Oh, thank you. And I think your comments touched on the fact that, at HBCUs, music isn't kind of sectioned off in a separate space. It's integral to the general composition of the university and student culture. So no, thank you for shedding light on that. And I thought of one other thing. You yourself are a composer. And so I'm wondering, whether at Fisk or other HBCUs, what is the presence of orchestral or classical music? I imagine HBCUs are also a space where that music is being performed and even innovated.
Yeah, so for the most part, we are doing, well, from one, what's mandated by the National Association of Schools of Music. But for the most part, that's kind of another interesting, I won't even say dilemma, but something that has come up as far as just getting, well, I won't say getting people to appreciate classical music, but I know, remember having a talk with someone that was trying to tell me that at least as HBCUs and maybe even just Fisk University, people don't, I mean, when they say they want a career in music, they don't want to do classical anymore. Well, the thing about classical music too, it gives the basic foundation of musicianship. I mean, you have to still study the Western European music and just to understand how today's music works. In fact, one of the things I get across in my class, because I teach music theory as well, is how some popular, even hip hop on occasions, will borrow from classical music. They will incorporate classical music in their works.
Thank you, thank you. And you just talked about this, but obviously the students are going to school to get an education and then to move on in their careers. So I'm just wondering, you know, the students you've taught and worked with in the ensembles, like what are they doing after graduation? Where are they performing and with who? Like what are they doing?
Well, most of the students that have been in jazz ensemble are not music majors. However, there's a few that remain in town, and they are able to use their music in other forms. In fact, I was just telling a student today about how one of my jazz ensemble, in fact, what I call the group that set the standard in 2008, well, first of all, there were about four from Bahamas, and one of those same students is still in town. He has his own music school, and he's a jazz pianist. So, and he has his own music school, and I've been kind of working with him occasionally. I mean, he's come to me for a few projects, and so yeah, that's one of the things they do. And then also, there are some students who, well, when they get music ed degrees, they get teaching jobs. And there are, I know at least two that I know of, who are still in Nashville that have public school teaching jobs. And one who, she sat in with the jazz ensemble a few times, but she just recently got her doctorate. In fact, she got her doctorate, well, let's see. I think it was the University of Kentucky where she got her doctorate. But I know she's also has been on the music faculty at Tennessee State University, she's a pianist. So yeah, those are some of the things that students do. Oh, and then my one student who I did work with a couple years ago, he ended up getting his degree in business administration. But he took some music classes. And one of the classes he took was my independent study in composition. And he did very well in that class to the point where he placed second prize in a composition contest. And I told him, as I was working with him, I mean, after he did some of his projects, I said, man, I'm very impressed with your work to the point where if you wanted to be a classical composer, I think you'd be successful at it. Now, right now, he's in grad school at Middle Tennessee State University, doing something in the area of still business administration, maybe even some work in musical production and all that. But yeah, that's what, it's an example of what some of the people do who come from Fisk, major music.
No, that's awesome. Thank you. Thank you. And obviously, you know, many of these HBCU music programs have been around for nearly 100 years. Fisk program has been around for almost 150 years, maybe. So I'm wondering at this point, like, what do you see, like, what's the future for even Fisk's music program? Where do you see the program going? What new endeavors and innovations and approaches need to take place? Like what's the next step is what I'm asking.
We're just trying to evolve as much as we can, just kind of keep up with the times and whatnot. one of the things that Dr. Paul Kwame had tried to establish was a program in Black commercial music, and I had been promising the group that I would try to move that forward as much as I can. And as I mentioned before, just along with keeping up with the times, and for those people who don't want to do classical music, or just find a way just to kind of keep them interested, keep them involved, and also just continue to look for ways that people can be successful. In fact, I'm thinking about a student who is a senior in high school who contacted me through LinkedIn, was interested in, I guess, musical composition as well as computer engineering. And so finding one way to make a career using both of those. And so if she does come, which I hope she does, I mean, I definitely will work with her on that, mixing those two.
Thank you. Thank you. And maybe connected with that, for those who are watching tonight and those who will watch this recording, what are some of the ways, how can we support the next generation of HBCU musicians and performers and music programs? Like what, how can the general public support you all's efforts at preserving the African American musical legacy?
Okay, was that at me or other people?
Yeah, there's you, yes.
I'm just checking. Okay. Well, as far as the general public goes, for lack of better words, they can donate. Not only that, but once we are do our things in public activities, just be present and support those activities. In fact, I can't remember. Well, I won't say I remember, but one of the people I've been working with is a woman who works in the Parthenon. In fact, I believe it's the Conservancy is what it's called. I know she's had this program called Kidsville, which she does these events meant to bring young people in, mostly, I would say, elementary school, maybe even middle school. Because my two kids, I have a daughter who's in 6th grade and a son who's in 2nd grade. They've participated in some of those projects. But I know, I was going to say in the summer, she did this project where I was guest lecturer. And one of the things she had him do on the side was make clarinets, because clarinet is my instrument. I'm thinking was the purpose of using the clarinet, but I think there was something else that brought her to use the clarinet. Yeah, and along similar lines, now that I think about it, another thing that I try to do, and I try to tell everybody, as far as getting people to come to Fisk University, I try to get them as soon as I can. That is, if I can even make an appearance in an elementary school. So I've made appearances at my children's elementary school as well. Because in fact, it was 2020, shortly before the pandemic shut everything down. We had performed at my kids' elementary school. They were both in elementary school at that time. So yeah, that's one thing. Just as I said, support us. Come out anytime we are in public. Just come see us, see what we're about. Just know how much of a resource we can be, especially in regards to music.
Yeah, and you did mention something that piqued my interest. Did COVID-19 and the pandemic impact your program in any way? And if so, like, how have you been able to recover?
Oh, it affected us big time. Because trying to do music classes virtually, it's not easy at all. I mean, yeah, some people do it, but it is really not easy, especially like, for instance, applied lessons. Because ideally, we have to have good microphones to get to good sound quality, because it's not all It's not very easy to evaluate. Now, fortunately, with music theory, that's something I was able to do virtually. Not very easy, but I was able to do it. So yeah, that it helped. Oh, and also just trying to perform in general, because like for instance, especially with singing, that was extremely difficult because that's was probably the singing or playing instruments that it carries the virus, just projecting the virus that way. So we really had to be careful on that. And then once we opened back, like the Fisk Jubilee singers, they had to rehearse in a larger space because of the fact that it had 16 people and they had to be spread out. Same with the jazz ensemble. Fortunately, with the jazz ensemble, the group is not that large, so it wasn't an issue. But once again, we had to protect ourselves. So I don't know. I want to say that maybe they had to sing with masks on when they were rehearsing. I don't know, but I know that there were some protectors for the instruments to put on the bells of the instruments, just so they can kind of contain the virus that way. So those are things. And interestingly enough, too, as a composer, well, I'll say like this. I have several compositions that are for one or two individuals. In fact, there are a few of them that I have that are about a minute or less. Those got performed a lot because people were recording themselves on video, posting them on YouTube and whatnot, that and doing virtual concerts. So I guess that was an example of taking a negative and making it positive, being able to do that. And the other thing I was going to mention too, flex band arrangements became common. And what that is arrangements or compositions that can be used, well, for the most part, let's just say a soprano voice, alto voice, tenor voice, and bass voice. So instruments that have those voices in particular, but you can use any instrument, any soprano instrument, any alto instrument, any tenor instrument, any bass instrument to cover. So written in a way that, as I said, either a string instrument, well, maybe not so much strings, but definitely woodwind instrument and brass instrument combinations. That is, different various combinations could still perform the music.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'd never heard of flex compositions. I guess the need to be flexible in this environment is super important. And of course, the story of African American music and the story of Fisk, right, is, being resilient and pushing through. And I'm not surprised that you all have been able to do that in the midst of all of this. With that said, I guess we have 10 minutes. We can turn it over to any audience questions if there are any.
This is Jennifer. I have a question. Are you able to offer students who come to Fisk to study music financial aid? I mean, do you see using your program as a means of attracting really ambitious young students?
Yeah, we do have scholarships available. Some of them come from donor or longtime donors, but yeah, we do have scholarships. And I know for those who just want to play in band, there are some scholarships available for the band as well.
Okay. And how do you go about selecting the repertoire? You mentioned some, I really don't know that much about music, but you mentioned an overseeing body, so I assume there's sort of a standard curriculum. But is it a collaborative process, or do you just dream it up at the beginning of the school year?
Okay, if you're referring to both the music, like for my ensembles or for any ensemble?
Oh yeah, for your own ensemble.
Okay. Combination of several things. More times than not, something that I think will fit my group really well. Like, for instance, one of the things, in fact, on Thursday, we're going to make a videotape for inclusion in the Monterey Jazz Festival, actually the preliminaries of the Monterey Jazz Festival. And the works that I picked for that, to make that video, one of them is a straight ahead blues, or at least 12-bar blues, more swing blues. Another one is a 80s cool jazz ballad. Once again, because of the instrumentation of the group, which is 2 flutes, trumpet, alto sax, tenor saxophone. I had to pick works that will lend itself for that. And then a piece that I first introduced to the group in 2006, but tends to be one of the group's favorites. In fact, I call it, it's the song "I Want You" by Marvin Gaye.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of call that a Fisk original. Likewise, the last one I just described, which is "In All My Wildest Dreams" by Joe Sample, I kind of call those Fisk originals just because I've never heard anyone else play those in that context. And not to mention, they were arranged specifically for the Fisk Ensemble and their instrumentation. Oh, and by the way, actually all the arrangements I do for the Fisk Jazz Ensemble are kind of flex arrangements to the point where they can be played by various instrumentations. In fact, I would say in probably the mid, like between 2010 and 2016, most of the instruments were bowed string instruments, like violins, violas, and cellos. But once again, the music was written so they could still play the music, and it would still sound respectable.
Sean, do you have any questions for Dr. Nash?
I do. I want to have a comment first. During my lunch today, the news was playing in the background, and so I would have welcomed the opportunity to have a Valentine's Day serenade by a Fisk Jazz Ensemble. It would have been much better than what I had. But yeah, anytime I hear interesting conversations about music educators, something always comes up, and that every generation that comes along is going to ruin music forever, right? Jazz was going to ruin music forever. Rock and roll was going to ruin music forever. Hip hop is going to ruin music forever. You hear a lot of that kind of nonsense. But you're intimately acquainted with young musicians and their attitudes about music, their taste in music, and sort of where that's leaning. So I wonder if you'd like to weigh in on that question about sort of what do you see coming next, and what do you hear from your students, and if you had any thoughts on that, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Well, the only thing I can say about it, well, first of all, that's kind of an interesting concept about how you mentioned rock and roll and hip hop destroying music. Well, it hasn't happened.
Right.
Yeah, everyone's going to have their likes and dislikes, but ultimately, and as I said too, with me and just the way I teach, I will take some popular music and still analyze it, not only have the students analyze it, but just deal with it in the same way as we do, like, for lack of better words, a musical conservatory. One thing that has happened, like for instance, in the voice studio, the professor has allowed students to use more American popular music as far as like when they do their recitals, because of course there's historically the French, Italian, German art songs, what they do, and even some American art songs. And there's been several students come in who want to do Broadway music, so she's allowed them to do that. In fact, the bottom line is anything that's written on paper, they can do. And that is in regards to the more popular music. As long as it's scored out, that's acceptable. But that's it. There's still just the core of doing French, Italian, German, and even American art songs.
Right. I was thinking about you saying that when you came to Fisk, that the jazz program was still operational and in pretty good shape. And the I think when people think about HBCUs in Tennessee or elsewhere, they maybe they do think about the marching bands, and they do think of the Jubilee singers and that sort of thing. So I was wondering, how you see your jazz students and in your the young jazz musicians fitting into Tennessee's larger culture. How does that play out?
Well, as I mentioned, fortunately with the jazz ensemble, we still get invited to do performances. I shouldn't say still. We've always been invited to do performances, because I'm thinking even that was one concern when Dr. Newkirk had established a marching band. I knew it would still do our performances, but just kind of still incorporating that into the overall instrumental music program. Fortunately, the new person, the gentleman who took the job starting in May, him and I have worked very well together on that end, just balancing between marching band, and because now he's in the concert season, because I think they still do some marching band performances when people ask them to. But as far as us just being part of the HBCU culture and expanding on that and being part of the community, we both work very diligently.
Yeah. What sort of venues do your students get to play outside of the university setting?
Well, one of our standing gigs since 2017 has been at the Nashville International Airport. Back then, they wanted to do a tribute to a celebration of Black History Month through music. And they contacted, it was a communications firm that works with Fisk. They contacted them because at first they asked for the Jubilee singers, but usually in February they're quite busy. And also there was a university choir. I guess part of it with them, they're a very large group, or they were a large group at the time. And so I said, hey, what about the jazz ensemble? That's something we'd love to be able to do. And so we did. And so, as I said, that's been a standing gig since 2017. Other than that, we play for other community type events. There's been a couple, actually, I think 3 or 4 jazz festivals we performed at since I've been here. And as I said earlier, I mentioned we performed at my kids' elementary school. Once again, it was a celebration of Black History program, but anytime we get asked and that's something we can do, we'll do it. So those are some of the things we do outside the university.
Right.
And then I'm thinking next week, there's a program that's on campus, but it's called now it's the Pearson Mitchell Lecture Series, where they have some speaker, usually someone in the arts and the humanities, and the Jazz Ensemble has provided music for that as well.
Great.
Langston, we're nearing the end of our time. Did you have some words you wanted to summarize or some concluding remarks?
Oh yeah, I really just want to thank Dr. Nash for his contributions here today. It was good to get that, obviously I provided, a general overview, but it was really important to get that perspective from the ground, right? And, the day-to-day activity of, music programs on HBCU's campuses. Obviously Fisk, has made an indelible mark on American music. And so I really do thank you, Dr. Nash, for providing insight into the current musical culture on campus. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Nash, for joining us. We appreciate you making time for us in your schedule, and good luck getting into the festival. We'll be looking for news on that. So we're going to sign off now and hope everybody joins us next month for murder ballads. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you
Good
all.
night.